What I want to do today is talk for just a couple of minutes, but I'm here because I want to listen to you. There are a lot of things that America needs to be set straight on, and the best way to do that is to advise your member of Congress on what you would like to see changed, or whatever word you want to use for it. And then Rich Carter, where's Rich? Carol Winnicky from my staff, and Kathy Brager from my staff are going to be writing down different ideas, and it doesn't have to be formal. The words don't have to be exactly what you want, but she's going to try to capture its thoughts and intentions and put them on paper. But then we'll take a photograph of that, and we'll meet in Washington and try to come up with by the people impacted by the laws the most. And those are obviously the people that I represent. So,
That's a good one.
yes, sir.
What do you have to say about when the prison might get opened over here at Thomson?
Okay. We have always been in favor of opening that prison for its intended purpose. The people of Thomson 10 years ago went through whether or not they should have a prison, made the decision, and have now been waiting for a long time to open up. And so we've always encouraged the state of Illinois to open it up as a standalone, and we've also encouraged the state of Illinois to sell to the federal government. There was an offer from the federal government, I think in 2004, to lease that facility as a federal prison. I don't know if you're aware of that. The state of Illinois turned it down. I thought, that doesn't make sense. And then I found out on November 13th, on a Friday, 12 hours before it broke in Chicago Tribune the next morning, that there was a plan to move Guantanamo Bay from Cuba to Thomson as, quote, a package deal, along with having the Federal Bureau of Prisons open up the facility. I met on February 15th on a Sunday with Harvey Lappin, who is the director of the U.S. Bureau of Prisons, and a fellow by the name of Phil Carter, who was in charge of detainees for the Department of Defense, the two key people that were involved in the whole transaction. And from the beginning, I said, look, we need a decoupling. We want the Federal Bureau of Prisons to open it up because they're about 138% of capacity, but we don't want the terrorists there. And that's probably what's going to happen. It's to open up as a standalone federal facility. I serve on the terrorism subcommittee on international relations, and I've studied that topic for years. Denny Haskard got me involved in narco-terrorism, following the flow of drugs around the world. And of course, that's not just South America, but that takes you directly to the poppy fields in Afghanistan. And as I talked to Undersecretary Carter, I said, why do you want to not close it, simply move it to a state center? He said, well, Gitmo has served as a rallying cry for terrorists. It serves as a recruiting tool for terrorists. And we figure if we can close down Gitmo, we can help stop the recruiting. And I said, well, the assault on the Kanbar towers in Saudi Arabia, the assault on the USS Cole, and the assault on us and 9/11 all happened prior to Gitmo being open. And he said, well, the people really, these terrorists really hate Gitmo. And I said, if that's the case, what's to stop their hatred of Gitmo from transferring to Thomson, Illinois? It's always been my concern. And it's been the concern of former governor of Kansas, Catherine Sebelius, who is now the Secretary of Health and Human Services, when President Obama wanted to send the terrorists to Fort Leavenworth. And she said, there's no way they'll ever break out, which would be the situation here. She said, but the area around there will become unsafe because these people draw each other. The threats essentially associated with Gitmo will simply transfer to Leavenworth. I returned, I was down in Gitmo about 4 weeks ago, flew down with Senator Burris. Walked around the compound, there are 1,940 military people that are guarding 183 prisoners, terrorists. Think about the numbers there. They're divided into 7 distinct camps. We were at Camp 7. They almost let us there in blindfold. They had to sign a document that we didn't know where Camp 7 was. Hard to get them. I didn't know where it was at all. I never could get them. But we got the car and went over there. Fahid Sheikh Mohammed is the one they wanted to try in New York, along with 18 other Al-Qaeda terrorists who are awaiting some type of a trial. And then there are 6 other camps, the Chinese Uyghurs, these are Chinese terrorists are one. And there's another group of leaders that are especially segregated from the other ones, and these are the leaders. And these are the people who are such manipulators of the other terrorists that they could look at someone with their eye in order to commit suicide. That's happened on 3 or 4 occasions now. So they're totally separated, so they're never within eye shot of the rest of the people. And they're put into pots because the rules of military apply as opposed to civilian rules. The cells are open 20 hours a day. And they feed to the central area where you have 20 people at most in each pod. You can take your choice of whether you want no TV, light TV, or a lot of TV. That's the way they set it up. It costs the taxpayers between $350 and $500 million to build out the facility in Gitmo Bay. And so when I was down there, I talked to a lot of the military, and they were just aghast at the thought of even moving the people in Gitmo to the United States. Gitmo is guarded with Cuba on one side and sharks on the other side. And people don't make the attempt to get there. They say, why would you want an area there that's surrounded by cornfields? So, 2/3 of the Congress agreed with my position on it. And last week in the defense bill, there was a special statement that no taxpayers' money can ever be used transfer a terrorist to the United States for trial or for detention, period.
Amen.
And we had sent a letter to President Obama in January telling him, look, open this thing up as a federal prison. We're not interested in having the terrorists. And then 2 months later, he wrote us a letter and said, we're going to open up as a federal prison. So many think that open as a federal prison is the first step towards this, but our position is open up as a standalone federal prison because you're going to have to fight it out with Congress anyway as to whether or not those prisoners will ever come here, either Thomson or the other place. So it appears now it's on track to open as a federal standalone prison. They'll, are you familiar with there are 8 pods down there, each with 200 cells. And so you do the math on it, if you go to a 2 cell, I think it comes out to about 3,200 people. Could be up there, but I think the most you're going to have is maybe, about 2,500.
With all the cells, all the pods.
The military was going to occupy 3 of the 8 pods. And the total number of people who have been at Thomson permanently, terrorists, 48 people, with 1,400 people in guards, with a $350 to $500 million build out. Since they're not coming, it's not going to cost the taxpayers additional money. So all 8 pods will be used by federal prisoners. That's going to bring a tremendous amount of wealth in the area. Must not subject us to the terrorists living in the area. So we hope everything stays the same. I know that was a long answer, but
Excuse me, but is there any time limit on this?
the state is coming up with a price somewhere around, I think, about $170, $180 million. And if the president goes through with his letter to us, that he's going to open it up regardless of whether tariffs are coming, hopefully, Rich, within the next year?
Yeah, it would have to be the appropriations bills.
Right, it'd be the appropriation bill. But when you staff a federal prison, you've got to move the people in stages. Because the guards come in, and then you have to train local guards. So it won't be up to maximum capacity. I don't know over what period of time, but there's obviously a way of staging.
Thank you.
You bet, you bet. So, a long, hard fight on it, but I simply could not, in good conscience, subject the people that I represent to live in an area that will have the highest concentration of terrorists in the country. And so that's why we fought so hard on it. Okay. Yes, sir.
Is there something you can do to fix this health care bill?
Well, there's several things to do. The first thing is to try to repeal it. And we're going to replace it with some very common sense things that could have been done a long time ago. We have a lot of small business people here, and unless you're incorporated, the cost of health care is treated differently with regard to your taxes, because you'll end up paying FICA and FUTA taxes on the money that you use to buy health care if you're a small business person. The cost of the health care is fully deductible as a business expense, but it still comes out to about 15% taxes that you're paying on money that you will be using to purchase health care. So we're on a bill that says if you're a small business person, you're not a corporation, to allow you to purchase health care on the same basis as a corporation, that automatically lowers the cost by 15.6%. The second thing to do is to have what's called association health plans. The House passed on two different occasions several years ago when the Republicans controlled it, association health plans that would allow people that belong to different organizations, National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Farm Bureau, Grange, any type of organization like that, to form purchasing pools. Jim, you're a manufacturer, and any of the trade associations that you would belong to would allow you to use that association as a method. And the whole purpose is the more people in the pool, the cheaper the insurance. That's just the way it is, because now you have bargaining power. And they went to the Senate and it failed by 2 votes. Good things usually die in the Senate. And then also we passed in the House on 3 different occasions tort reform. You've got to have some way to bend the curve of these high verdicts that are against the hospitals and physicians. Senate never took it up because you essentially need 60 votes over there to do that. And there are a lot of things that can't be done. The state of Illinois has had a high-risk pool for years for people who simply cannot get insured because of pre-existing illnesses. If the federal government's going to get involved at all, just write a check to each of the states to beef up that pool and to bring the premium down and to expand it. Those are some of the things that we're in favor of. I mean, they're very common sense. It doesn't take a lot of math to it. It doesn't spend a lot of money. In fact, the Republican alternative was scored by the Congressional Budget Office to actually save about $60 billion over 10 years. The Democratic plan that passed is now in excess of $1 trillion and growing. Yes, sir.
Why didn't the 2 parties get together and do this right the first time instead of having to do it over again?
Well, because the Democrats, there's so many.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the 10th Amendment, because I'm sick and tired of the Commerce Clause and the General Welfare Clause in the Constitution giving carte blanche to the federal government. The 10th Amendment was passed after those were ratified, and should have limited those. And that's the problem with our economy. We're spending all of this money. And I'd rather not bring any money back to this district because it costs us too much. It's not free. Because, and I'm not speaking to you,
No, it's
I think
better on-
you're a
it's better
good
on
guy,
roads and
is that when somebody brings something back to Pennsylvania, they gotta say yes to something in Illinois and something in Iowa and something in Nevada. And when you add it all up and the government gets done sucking off its piece of the pie, it's costing us more money than the money you bring back. I think we gotta get the government back to spending money on those things it's specifically given the power to spend money on, such as border security,
National defense.
national defense.
Right.
Is there any, I mean, and this pay-go thing is a joke. It
Why
ought
don't
to
you
be-
explain to them what it
Well, it means that any new spending, it means that you've got to, you know, either increase taxes or cut spending by $1
Right.
for every dollar.
The idea is
You ought to
that
be
it's not foul.
cutting
Right.
$5 for every new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ought to be cutting $1 for every dollar of old spending. We got to get this $13 trillion down. And pay-go, they've already found ways to get by it.
They just exempt it.
Yeah.
What that means is instead of, if there's a program that say costs $50 million, instead of raising taxes by that amount or cutting another $50 million program, they just waive the rules.
Yeah.
And another $50 million to the deficit.
Yeah, and I'm not picking on you, because I believe you're one of the good guys. And we're new to Illinois. But what can we can't get rid of $13 trillion in a couple of years, but what can realistically be done with the right people in Congress and the Senate? What can realistically be done as a program to whittle that thing down?
Okay. Let's say it freezes at $13 trillion. What does that mean? Congressman Paul Ryan,
Yeah.
Congressman Paul Ryan from Wisconsin has kids that are 5, 7, and 9. And so he asked the Congressional Budget Office to give an idea of what the tax rates would have to be when his kids are out of college paying taxes. And they said those paying, Congressional Budget Office said people paying 10% now would be paying 25%. People paying 25% now would be paying 66%. People paying 35% would be paying 88%.
And every one of those percentages is really a degree of socialism. They got
Amen.
control
Yes.
of your money, period. That's what it really is.
Well,
Translate dollars to socialism.
Right, and then that's, if you started balancing your budget, henceforth, $60 billion was added to the national debt over the weekend. I don't know what kind of party went on, but that's how it got to $13 trillion. I mean, people say, well, Don, you vote no on almost everything. I said, yes.
Amen.